Good morning, fifth grade. We're going to continue reading chapter 5 in Esperanza Rising. Before we begin, I want you to answer this question. How did Esperanza respond during her train ride to California? Use evidence from the text to support your answer. So we're going to start on page 72 today, but you can go back and think about how Esperanza responded. On this page, it talks about how she felt like she didn't belong on the train with the other peasants. And you can talk about how she responds to the little girl who touched her doll. And how, her mother made a doll for the little girl. And how she was glad that when the little girl got off the train. So you can think about those things as you write down your answer. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the focus question. How does Esperanza's attitude towards her new life and her move to California differ from the other characters? What can we infer about her based on these differences in attitude? So just like Esperanza responded differently on the train than her mother did or than Miguel did, we're going to think about how she responds to moving to California and how that's different from the other characters as well. Our vocabulary words today are beggar. That's a person who's homeless or who asks for money or food. Crippled. That is someone who can't walk because of a disability. And intimate. That is just a private or personal, it can be a conversation. Okay, and now we're going to use our CSPS strategy to think about what Esperanza's new life in California is. So I'm at the top of page 72, and remember we're using our CSPS strategy. Clicketa, clicketa, clicketa. The song of the locomotive was monotonous as they traveled north, and the hours seemed like Mama's never-ending ball of thread unwinding in front of them. Each morning the sun peeked over the spur of the Sierra Madre, sometimes shining through pine trees. In the evening it set on the left, sinking behind another peak, and leaving pink clouds and purple mountains against the darkening sky. When people got on and off, Esperanza and the others changed their seats. When the car filled up, they sometimes stood. When the car was less crowded, they put their valises under their heads and tried to sleep on the benches. At every stop, Miguel and Alfonso hurried off the train with a package. From the window, Esperanza watched them go to a water trough, unwrap an oilcloth, and dampen the bundle inside. Then they would wrap in oilcloth again, board the train, and put it carefully back into Alfonso's bag. All right, and so let's look at the setting. They are still on the train, and they are traveling north to what we know is they're traveling to California. And they've been on the train for several days because it talks about in the mornings what the sun looks like and in the evening what the sun looks like. And so in box 2 we could write Esperanza and her family are on the train headed north to California, and they've been on the train for several days. All right, you can write this quote about the song of the locomotive. You could talk about each morning what happened. That also lets us know they've been there for several days. All right, and now we're going to try to describe Esperanza, what she liked, and then we're looking for her problem. So let's think about what is going on in Esperanza's life at this point. Esperanza is fleeing Mexico and immigrating to America because her father died and Tia Louise burned down her house. All right. And let's keep going. Esperanza asked, "What's in there?" Okay, as the train pulled away from yet another station. "You will see when we get there." He smiled, and a knowing look passed between him and Miguel. Esperanza was annoyed with Alfonso for taking the package on and off the train without telling her what was inside. She was tired of Hortensia's humming and weary of watching Mama crochet as if nothing unusual were happening to them. But most of all, she was bored with Miguel's constant talk about trains. He chatted with the conductors. He got off at every stop and watched the engineers. He studied the train schedule and wanted to report it all to Esperanza. He seemed as happy as Esperanza was irritable. All right, so definitely know Esperanza does not want to be on this train, but Miguel is having a good time, and that is annoying to her. "When I get to California, I'm going to work on the railroad," said Miguel, looking anxiously toward the horizon. They had spread pieces of brown paper in their laps and were eating pepinos, cucumbers sprinkled with salt, and ground chiles. "I'm thirsty. Are they selling juice in the other car?" asked Esperanza. "I would have worked at the railroad in Mexico," continued Miguel, as if Esperanza had not tried to change the subject. "But it is not easy to get a job in Mexico. You need una palanca, a lever, to get a job at the railroads. I had no connections, but your father did. Since I was a small boy, he gave me his word that he would help me, and he would have kept his promise. He always kept his promises to me." At the mention of Papa, Esperanza felt that sinking feeling again. She looked at Miguel. He quickly turned his head away from her and looked hard out the window, but she saw that his eyes were damp. She had never thought of how much her Papa had meant to Miguel. It dawned on her that even though Miguel was a servant, Papa had thought of him as the son he never had. But Papa's influence was gone. What would happen to Miguel's dreams now? "And in the United States?" she asked quietly. "I hear in the United States you do not need una palanca, that even the poorest man can become rich if he works hard enough." All right, and so let's think back to Esperanza's problem. We know that she is bored on the train, and she is irritable that Miguel is enjoying himself. And you can write down this quote for her problem. And her problem, although her problem isn't solved, we can say that she continues to talk to Miguel about his dreams of becoming a train engineer. So you can write that down in box 4. Esperanza continues to talk to Miguel about his dreams of becoming a train engineer. Okay, and you can write down this last sentence for your solution. Last, you have enough time to write your paragraph. What is Esperanza's attitude toward her new life in California?